Welcome to the Alliance's weekly webinar. We're happy to have you here. We have a great presentation set up for you today. But as we always do, I want to start off with a moment of silence to acknowledge the lives that have been lost. As you are aware, the numbers are going up real fast. Lots of lives are being lost right now, and a lot of people are really sick and in need of help and support. And so we're going to take a moment of silence to acknowledge the losses and send some positive thoughts out there. Okay. What I'd like to do is start off with highlighting, because you know I love to, our upcoming trainings that we have. We have 4 trainings left in the month, and I will tell you that we just finished the August training calendar. And if you keep your eyes and ears peeled on the coming up distribution or e-blast of the Ally, you will see all of the exciting things coming in August, and we'll have a larger PR campaign starting in at the beginning of next week. But if you catch the Ally, keep your eyes open. They're going to be there, but they are exciting and incredible. But we are still in July, and so I want to highlight some great things that are going on in July. Tomorrow we have Taking Effective Pictures. And I really recommend this one, folks. It's very popular, and I just want to, highlight that this is not just, this is really about how you can capture moments within your organization when you don't have a $3,000 camera or a professional photographer working for you every day. Being able to capture important moments, being able to capture the right moments in the right way, so that you can use that in your promotional materials. Nobody likes to take a fuzzy picture or a picture that is not croppable or all those types of things. And so you can wind up losing opportunities because the picture wasn't taken just right. And so this is a wonderful training that's going to be on how you can capture those moments with the technology that you have, more likely than not, in your wallet or on your desk right now. So I highly recommend that. Next Monday, we have budget basics and cash flow. It's going to be a wonderful one. Nuts and bolts, but still important. Next Wednesday, you saw when you logged in that I had a flyer up for it, our executive director roundtable. This is the first one that we're doing. And we are starting off with a focus on women of color. This is incredibly important. Our moderator will be Portia Espy. And then we have 3 incredible panelists. And since I have the flyer, I might as well show you again. So let me go ahead and bring that up real quick. We have Chalisa Presley, who is the ED of the Diaper Bank of the Delta. We have Mavis Cray, who's the ED of R3SM Inc., Recover, Rebuild, Restore Southeast Mississippi. And then we have Sharon Jones, who's the ED of Parole to Pride. And I actually see Mavis in the house. She's got her webcam on. Let's see if any of the other panelists are here. Let's see. Mavis, I don't see them here. Mavis, do you want to say anything about the conversation for next week? I think I still see you on mute. There you go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm thankful and grateful. I serve as the executive director with R3SM in Hattiesburg. We help homes who are affected by storms, by repairing and rebuilding. A lot of the challenges that I have faced have been being a woman of color, is one of the things that are not really discussed in the nonprofit world. As far as being a director is something that you really just deal with and keep moving. So I have faced different challenges, but we make the best of it. So I'm very thankful and grateful to still be able to serve. In all situations, and even with challenges, and hopefully we'll be able to bring light and also bring healing to different situations within our state and within our nation.
Thank you, Mavis. Perfectly said. And I do want to highlight the four main sort of talking areas or discussion points during their roundtable. So the first is going to be around what are the barriers that they have faced in the past to get to where they are, or the barriers that they face now in terms of being able to move forward and move their initiatives. The other area is on what advice they could give to rising women of color who are trying to take on leadership roles or who want to be a leader in their communities. The other area is going to be on what advice they have for people who are not women or not people of color. That how can we, as people who are not women of color, advocate? How can we help support? How can we make sure that systems are being changed effectively? So a really, really robust and important conversation. As you see, it's an hour and a half. The first hour is going to be a roundtable for them to talk and discuss, and then the last half hour is going to be an opportunity for Q&A and interaction discussion. So really a powerful event. And I do want to highlight that this is going to happen every month. We want to make this a space for executive directors and anybody else in organizations to come together, share a space, and have really meaningful and rich conversations around what they are facing right now. I don't want to give away what our presentation will be for August, but also equally amazing group of individuals. And then our last training for the month, back to here, is the customer's always right, examining service that matters. So pretty straightforward in the name. I hope you all can join us. We would look forward to having you. So with that, I wanted to start off a little bit differently today before we have Matt speak. I wanted to, oh, perfect. Let's see here, actually, sorry about that, y'all. Just had a quick note. We might actually just bump ahead. Melanie, are you in the room?
Yeah, I'm only on the phone. I'm sorry. We've been having storms and internet power issues.
No worries at all. No worries at all. So everybody, this is Melanie Arlington. She is an incredible person doing incredible work. And she is the executive director of the Oxford Film Festival. If you are anybody like me, I love film. I'm a huge movie buff, and I love film festivals. And while that industry, I follow the industry news, not like the Hollywood gossip, but like industry news. And I know that all the arts, including film and festivals, are really in a struggling time right now. And so I really think it's important that we highlight organizations and types of organizations and sectors that are dealing with COVID in unique ways. And unfortunately, we see a lot of the arts having to close or shut their doors or really think about how they can continue their work when people really shouldn't be getting together and gathering in large groups in public spaces or even in small groups these days. So with that, Melanie, the floor is yours. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and I'm going to stop talking.
Thanks for having me. I'm so sorry I can't be on camera and see all your faces. So I am Melanie Addington, Executive Director of the Oxford Film Festival, and we are in our 17th year. I've been the Executive Director for 5 years. I'm the first year-round full-time employee, although we're hopefully eventually going to have more than just me. And our festival is set for March 18th through 22nd, and I think we all know what happened March 13th. We were no longer able to have groups of more than 50, and we bring about 8,000 to 10,000 people to Oxford. So we had to postpone after we had paid most of our bills and were suddenly at a loss of what to do with over 200 movies we promised to host. A bunch of sponsors who had given us money and promise of an event. And so we started researching what options there were. And we were able to quickly pivot to an online virtual festival to start in April. And it actually, because of the way the industry works, there's lots of negotiations with distributors and filmmakers and other festivals. So we kind of kept going through August so that films who weren't sure what they were doing, how they were able to release all the new rules, could figure it out. And now that we actually have figured all of them out, we're finishing August 14th. So I'm very excited. But we also learned because, and why I'm on the phone today and not on camera, there's a lot of areas in Mississippi that sometimes have internet issues that they can't just go online and watch our movies. So we also raised a few funds to pivot to a drive-in movie concept. And that allows people who can't get online to go and still see some movies. We mixed between some independent films that we had with also some, fun classics. So we're showing things like Do the Right Thing and Purple Rain and Grease and, Labyrinth is tonight. So we're excited about that. So that's basically what we did. I've really watched and observed a lot of other bigger festivals haven't been able to pivot. Part of that is just they had too many people to be able to do what was needed, where we're small and scrappy. So it really actually helped us in this outcome to be able to sort of pivot. We did apply for a PPP loan, but we only have 1.5 staff. So that really carried us through for a few months while we had no income until the festival started. We actually started finally getting out of the red last Saturday. So we're very excited. And we're hoping that our sponsors feel that we have fulfilled what we had promised, which was 5 days of film to 6 months of film. So we feel like we've really tried to work to stretch and make sure our audience and our filmmakers and our sponsors all feel appreciated the way they deserved. So it's been a really exciting pivot. We're trying to help other festivals, not just in Mississippi, but throughout the country. I'm on a lot of phone calls and trying to help others who haven't figured it out yet, because we want the whole industry to thrive. Independent filmmakers, well, a big studio film coming, as many of you may know from the help when it came, brings a lot of money with it. But small independent films also bring good opportunity for locals to really work. They hire a local catering crew. They hire the local teenager who wants to learn how to film. And so it's a really vital part of the entire arts industry. So I guess questions? I don't know. I feel like I sort of just sped through that.
That is incredible, and I love the way that you pivoted. I want to pose this question to the group. If you're on camera, please participate. Don't drop off a camera. No, you're going the wrong way. Turn on your cameras. If you're in the chat, feel free to enter this. Does anybody remember going to the drive-in when they were kids? Was that like a big part of your childhood? Yes? Okay, here's what I'm saying. Huge part of mine. I remember it clearly. Love it. Melanie, can we just like keep the film festival thing you got going on and add in driving? Like, could we? Because I would go to Oxford for that. Like, I would.
Yeah. We're really hoping. Also we don't know what's going to go on through the fall and the spring with coronavirus. So we're really keeping the drive-in model for a while, because I'm actually high risk. I have cirrhosis, and I take pills that make my immune system go low. So I want to keep going to the movies. So I've created that safe option so I can keep going to the movies. So I know that we've had a lot of our audience really appreciate that, because in Mississippi, a lot of us have lots of high-risk things for coronavirus. So we've had a really interesting audience response, both people my age, in the 40s plus up, who are excited because they went to the drive-in as a kid, and a lot of young people that are like, what is a drive-in? I'm going to try it. And so it's kind of rekindled that romance of the drive-in. But the great thing about it is because of FM transmitters, now you play the sound through your radio and it sounds really crystal clear. It's not like the old crackly boxes we used to have that stuck to our window. So it's been a really fun pivot, and something I hope that we get to do for a long time, especially because we bought all the equipment to make it happen. So now we need to use it.
That is incredible. I will be there. I am super excited. I am like legit jazzed. Okay, wait, Krista, so you're doing this. So you know what I'm thinking? Let's do an Alliance Network drive-in night, and we'll all hop over. Okay, this is great. Okay, I'm super excited.
We actually have been partnering with people. We actually we're doing the John Lewis Good Trouble this Sunday with the William Winter Institute, and we are talking to other businesses. They're like, we're trying to do, some sort of social gathering for a company, but obviously we can't. So we're starting to really start helping and branching out with organizations that want to somehow network but safely in their cars and wait for each other. So yeah, it's a really good resource for that. And I think, a lot of churches throughout the state really hopped on that right away. So I think people learned it's a really safe way to socialize right now.
That's great. I love it. I love it. So we definitely have time for Q&A, but I want to throw it out there, Melanie. How can people find out more, learn more, sign up for information? What's that look like?
Yeah, we have a website, oxfordfilmfest.com, and that's where we put all of our what's up and coming. But we also have a newsletter that goes out every Friday, and that's where people usually find out first what movies are playing, and we try to sneak in discounts so that people actually read, and stuff like that. So that's two ways. And then we have a phone number for those who just can't. We will work with people to safely pay on site if they can't deal with credit card and other issues. And that's just 877-560-3456, which is also film, if that helps.
Wonderful. Just so y'all know, I did put the link in the chat. It's oxfordfilmfest.com. And just if you don't mind taking a second and talk about, because we're doing good on time, could you talk a little about what it was like for you as the ED in this process, and you're involved in the arts? Sort of, where do you see things right now? What do you see things, or how do you see it going in the future? Or is there just some general sort of perspective from the leadership about your experience, what this was like for you, and sort of big picture, what are some things that are on your mind and you're sort of thinking through and processing?
Yeah, when our board of directors met, most of them are made up of community members, a couple of filmmakers, but most of them aren't really in the film festival world. So they do look to me for like, well, what should we do with something like this? And this is such an unknown, especially in mid-March. Basically, festivals the week before us, True False in Columbia, had happened. And so all of a sudden, we were the first week, other than South by Southwest, which was a huge announcement, to have to figure it out. And so I asked, could we not use the word cancellation? That was a bad word for me, but use the word postponement and let me think. So it took me probably 2 weeks of just calling, researching, seeing what options were out there. And luckily, I think my skill, I used to be a reporter, and so I'm very big about investigating and researching before deciding. And so that really helped to not leap into a decision. I think some people just like put the films up online for free, and then filmmakers were mad, and just trying to like think of their audience and not all of their collective who they owe something to. And so we called some sponsors and asked what they'd be comfortable with. We called filmmakers, asked what they'd be comfortable with. So really just taking that extra time and allowing yourself to say, we're still figuring it out, was so critical this year. And that's something I've really recommended to other arts organizations, that if you know you absolutely cannot do it, don't execute something poorly. Explain, we cannot do anything this year, we're canceling, or say, still figuring it out, but we hope to have it figured out in the future. But right now, we're not doing anything. And just being responsible and explaining the step-by-step process to who you're accountable to, I think, is what people are looking for. We got a lot of thank yous from filmmakers that we were just like, this is what we're doing. You have no choice. We were like, hey, let's just figure this out and engage in a dialogue and do this together. And even if it didn't work perfectly, which, as you could tell, sometimes when my internet goes out, it still worked and we tried something. And I think that's what people appreciate this year, is that you don't just give up totally, that you engage them in that dialogue.
This may seem a little bit crazy to be asking right now, but when it comes to, well, a lot of the work that we do, but also in particular the arts, these are not things that come together quickly. They're big operations, and it involves a lot of people. Are you already thinking about 2021 and how, especially as we look at, even if a vaccine became available by the end of the year, is everybody going to have it? Are people going to feel safe? As an executive director who's involved in bringing people.
This is Lori. Yeah, this is Lori.
Lori, would you mind muting yourself? Thanks for you saying your name. Because it involves.
I don't want to reschedule.
Let me go ahead and just. Let's see. Sorry, y'all. So, Melanie, going back to what I was saying, because there are so many pieces, are you already sort of planning for 2021, or are you still sort of just hanging on and waiting?
Yeah, because it's gonna be I don't
Melanie, can you hear me? Ooh. Did we lose Melanie? Uh-oh. Well, if she comes back, Melanie, if you can hear me, feel free to come back and hop in. But I kind of want to throw that out to the rest, to all of you. It's a question that I think is valid for most, if not all, of our organizations. Are you all seeing now? Here we are in July, going into August. Have we reached that threshold where really we need to start thinking about what this could look like a year from now, or are people still hanging on? Would love to hear your feedback. Anybody?
Hey Dave, I'll share. The plan that we're kind of executing is trying to cover all our bases and hoping for the best, which is tough.
I'm back.
Can
you hear me?
Oh,
yes. Thank you, Melanie. Tammy is just finished, or is not just finished.
Sorry.
She is sharing a thought, but we'll hop right back to you once we get there.
Yeah, sorry. We do programming for students and their families. We've pivoted to online right now, and we have partners who are taking advantage of that. Our programming is after school, so schools are about to go back, but I know that there's lots of questions there. People don't know what that's going to look like. So we're sort of prepared with both options. And really a lot of it'll be up to our facilitators as well. I want to give them the option to do what they feel comfortable doing. And I would never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing. So we're sort of trying to cast a wide net, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We have a plan A, B, C, and if we need to develop more, we'll develop more. I mean, flexibility is the key. And I go back to something I heard at the very beginning back in March. Somebody said, an expert said, whatever you're doing today is probably not going to work tomorrow, and be prepared to do something different. And, as nonprofit folks, we're pretty creative. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. I hope that this time next year, we are looking at more of our old normal, not the new normal. But it's all on the table right now. So that's tough.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tammy. Thank you. Melanie, I don't know if you heard my question. I'll restate it. Was just asking, what are you already looking at doing 2021 differently, given where we are now?
Yeah, and speaking to Tammy's point of being flexible, we sort of put out, this is our plan for now. We plan to do outdoor screens only in March, and then an April virtual festival for those who don't feel comfortable traveling and or depending on travel bans. So the thing that we learned very quickly in doing the virtual fest is, even if locally not everyone wanted to go online, we had suddenly 12 countries paying attention. We had almost every zip code in America watching these movies, where physically not everyone could necessarily drop everything and travel to Oxford to watch. So we really, while we didn't want to pivot, in learning in the pivot process that we had a new accessibility level really was important for us. And speaking of schools, I do teach at the University of Mississippi in the fall, so we're doing a virtual class, but just working with the different departments on campus, trying to figure out, since they don't plan to do anything physical in terms of arts, trying to figure out maybe hosting something at the drive-in or doing a virtual screening of something with the Center for Southern Studies. And so it's been really interesting, and basically every day I wake up and learn something new and pivot a different way. And I think that's just kind of the critical thing, is not doubling down and saying, this is the way we're going to do things, because the universe is going to tell you something else. So.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up a really interesting point, and I would love to, again, throw this out to you and everybody else in the space. Since Tammy already volunteered once, come on, folks. But would love to hear, are there practices or things that you have done that you think might actually stick, that you have found that you either enjoy it or that are more effective, and that you are seriously considering keeping as a permanent, as much as we know what permanent means, structure for an indefinite period? Caitlin, I see your hand.
Yeah, we did, as Dave knows well and the hub directors know, we did a virtual recruitment fair for all of our AmeriCorps programs. We've got 8 programs trying to recruit about 400 AmeriCorps members to serve in the unknown, maybe virtual, maybe in person, who knows. So we did a recruitment fair on Zoom. We had fast-paced, like 3-minute elevator speech presentations from each program, and then we allowed participants to go into breakout rooms and talk one-on-one with each program. And small attendance. I'm not trying to pretend like a million people were there, but logistically it was very smooth, and our program directors really liked it. They depend on word of mouth recruitment, so that's really hard for them right now. And they also depend a lot on the schools recruiting their own AmeriCorps members, and they're unable to do that. So I think they appreciated us kind of working out the kinks to get that done, and learning how to conduct an event like that. Spoiler alert, it takes about 4 people to manage an event like that. 1 for the chat, 1 for the breakout rooms, 1 for the presenters. So, but it was a really good learning experience for us. I'm glad we were able to kind of pull that off. And for the program directors, you know, they were like, wow, you know, it really helps, makes our programs more inclusive for folks who maybe can't get around. And it allowed them to recruit outside of their like geographic areas, which I think was good. They're kind of trying to figure out right now if they can even have members serving from out of state, which, hey, anything's possible at this point, pretty much. So I think we're going to continue to do that event. And I think we're going to work on promoting it a little bit better, but I mean, it was great. I love how our programs are shifting to include virtual options, because I do think it makes our programs more accessible and more inclusive. We do have several programs who engage with folks with disabilities, and for a long time, they've said, it can be a challenge to have accessible service opportunities. So that's like a side benefit to moving to virtual, which I think we're going to keep.
Really interesting. Yeah, it kind of brings up that idea of, maybe it's not one or the other, it's both. Yeah. Anybody else like to share one? We'll take one more and then we'll wrap this discussion. And I do want to.
Yes, this is Peggy.
Yeah, go ahead, Peggy.
This is Peggy. I'd like to share. We have an after school program. We are a youth development organization, and we have 3 programs, and we was operating those programs out of the Tunica County facilities, the Tunica National Golf and Tennis Center, and also all of the rec centers here in the county. So that was before COVID. But when this happened, we went remote with the literacy and education program first, and we set it up as a mentors, mentees. So we have mentors that's working with the participants all through the week on the educational software, teaching them how to and encouraging them how to stay on the software. The goal is to get them in the habit of reading and reading and reading more, because we are focused on low literacy, low reading levels, and behavior issues. And we notice we don't have behavior issues when we are working directly in the household with the child. And it gives us an opportunity to really get a personal relationship with the parent, because that was also one of our goals. And so we plan to keep this structure. And now we are able to serve kids and all around, not just in Tunica County. We have Tunica County now, DeSoto County, and also Coahoma County. And so our program will continually to be remote. And the biggest thing, the challenge that we are having, building an organization virtually and then being able to watch over everything. But we're building it on G Suites and then teaching everybody how to communicate. So that's been a big thing. So we are going to continue to go this way, and that way we can serve and we can really help, and we know what help the family really need, because we're in the house. So it's really good. And we also, with the tennis program, we are NJTL, National Tennis Junior Tennis and Learning Organization, that we teach character and life skills. And we are going to have a fall virtual tennis program, because we will have in Clarksdale, we will be meeting kids, but we can only serve like 8 at a time safely. So the rest of it will be virtually, and all the kids can participate. So that's that's the direction that we are going, and we are really, really happy about it.
Peggy, that's fantastic. I love that you can serve your kids, and being in their home. I mean, it's, talk about a paradigm shift. That's incredible. That's incredible. Caitlin, yeah. I
did just, now you brought something up, and just a kind of a caveat to this conversation too, is we are finding that, AmeriCorps members are seeing some situations that they may or may not be equipped to deal with. That's kind of the flip side of being in the home, is you're not in the school setting anymore. I mean, they're seeing kids who do not have access to food,
right.
Domestic situations. So we've also had to, at first I kind of thought, oh, we can adjust the budget, these programs are going to be less expensive to run, but we've had to invest in, we've paid for mental health services for all of our AmeriCorps members, kind of not as, it was available before, but it really became a high priority because they're being exposed to a lot more difficult situations being in the home. So, there is kind of a flip side that you have to plan for, which is making sure that, your volunteers and your AmeriCorps members have the backup that they need, because they're really seeing some situations that they probably did not know about that are going on in the home. So not to be a downer, but
yeah, well,
I know we like to prepare.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah. So we do need to move on. So I want to just point out one thing that Lori said. I love Zoom. Hope some of my meetings will continue on Zoom even after COVID, because it cuts down on the drive time. Absolutely. I will point out that we are using GoToMeeting. One of the things that I have loved about Zoom, which we're invested in GoToMeeting, so it's not changing, sorry y'all, but they have that enhancement thing where you can make yourself look better. That's awesome. I love that. Like, get rid of those dark circles in the morning. It's gonna be great. If it only can fix my hair. Anyways, the other thing I hope that sticks is on a personal note that, you know, if people are coming to work, and while they shouldn't come to work when they are sick, when we all do share a space again, I kind of like the if you're not feeling well, wear a mask thing. So hopefully now that everybody's invested in really fancy designer masks for themselves for the next year, hopefully we can get that to stick. I think that would be really nice. So with that, we need to turn it over, not need to, we get to turn it over to Matt Freeland. He has worked with us for since the beginning of COVID, really. You all have seen him in previous webinars, and he is back to give us an update on the money. So Matt, the floor is yours, and I will go ahead and give you the ability to share your screen.
Well, first of all, thank y'all, and I want to apologize for being late. I had it on my calendar for 10 and was in the middle of a meeting when Dave emailed me at 9 and said, "Are you coming?" So first of all, I want to apologize for that. Dave has asked me to talk about the Payroll Protection Program loan forgiveness and where that is right now. So if you haven't applied for a PPP loan, you're in luck. You have until Saturday, August the 8th to apply for that. And as of July 17th, there was still $131 billion available. So I would say if you have not done that, please do so or consider doing it. But let's talk about forgiveness. So on June 16th, they finally made the loan forgiveness application from SBA available. And you can go to the SBA government the website and get a copy of that to fill out. Banks aren't ready for it yet. So keep that in mind. There's been several changes as of June 5th to the forgiveness application, and we'll talk about that here briefly, but just wanted to go ahead and say that some banks are going to be using a third-party software, and we've heard from several of them that they're waiting on SBA for more guidance to do that. Did see a question come up, and I'll try to answer those as I get them. You have to have employees to qualify. If you've got 1099 independent contractors or volunteers, you're not going to qualify for this loan. You have to be paying them W-2 wages. So this week, the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and a company called Biz2Credit have developed a tool to help you, the borrower, and us, the advisors, complete this forgiveness application. It's a 5-page application. And you can find that on the website, www.pppforgivenesstool.com. And so primarily, I'm going to walk through what that asks you, and we'll cover some of the different changes that have occurred during this time. But I went through it yesterday and was just trying to make sure I was covering my bases and make sure I was going to be able to tell you all the right things to do. But you're going to need your basic information. You're going to need your lender bank name, your lender contact person, their title, their email and email address. You'll need your SBA loan number and your loan amount and the disbursement date. Thanks, Dave, for putting that in the chat. That's exactly right. With the new rules, what they did originally when PPP first came out, you had 8 weeks to spend your money on, salaries, mortgage interest, utilities, and rent. Well, under the new rules, you now have up to 24 weeks. So if you received your loan on or after June 5th, you automatically use 24 weeks to do this. That's what all your calculations are going to be on. If you received your loan disbursement before June 5th, you have 8 weeks to do it, or you can elect the 24. So June 5th is your cutoff date. If you got your loan proceeds before that, you can use 8 or 24 weeks. If your loan is after June 5th, use 24 weeks. You can also, my understanding is, if you've already dispersed those and say it took you 13 weeks to disperse it, you can use that too. But I wouldn't do that if you've had any changes in your number of employees, because number of employees is what's going to dictate your percentage forgiveness. And we'll get into that in just a minute. You also have an alternate covered period start date. And if you have a payroll that runs every 2 weeks or less, so if you're paying somebody every 2 weeks or every week, you can make an election, an alternate election, to start your date on the first day of the payroll following that. Okay, so that's a mouthful. It's hard for me to understand when I said it. But basically what it means is, let's say you received your funds on April 20th and your first payroll after that is April 26th, and you pay people weekly or every 2 weeks, then you can start it on that later date. That gives you 6 more days. When we talk about these expenses that you incurred or paid, in the instructions to the forgiveness application, they say include expenses that you have incurred or paid. So if for some reason, let's say rent, maybe you paid it on the 5th, you've incurred it as of the 1st of the month, and your cutoff date was on the 3rd, you could still use that rent payment. So it can get kind of tricky. So as you're going through this online application, if you choose to do it that way, there's going to be some general business information that they're going to ask you for. They're going to ask your legal business name, your tax ID number, your date of incorporation, your business structure, which I'm going to assume everyone here is a 501c3, your address and phone number, who's signing it, what's their position. And then they're going to ask some things that you don't necessarily have to answer. You can if you want. They're going to ask if you're a veteran. They're going to ask your gender. They're going to ask your race, and they're going to ask your ethnicity. And you can disclose that if you will. The ethnicity actually is more related to, and I don't know why they make a distinction here, is more, they're asking if you're Hispanic or Latino there, and I don't know why that's not in race. I'm not going to debate those things. I didn't create that website, but just know that you can answer them or you can not answer those. So if an agency has added a critical employee to fill a position that had been vacated prior to the PPP, their income was not included in the PPP request, can they reapply and include this vital position? I don't know. I wish I did. I know that you can include that person in your employee count, but I don't know that you're going to be able to really get more money from it. I would ask your banker who you did the loan for to see if you can do that. But my understanding is I have not seen where you can get an amended amount. There are 2 forgiveness forms. There are Form 3508 and Form 3508EZ, and you are eligible to file the EZ forgiveness form, so that's going to be a shorter form. If you meet one of 3 requirements, and the first one really doesn't apply to, or not really, it does not apply to the nonprofit world. It's a borrower is a self-employed individual, independent contractor, or sole proprietor who had no employees. So that doesn't include y'all. If you did not reduce the pay of any employee by more than 25% and you did not reduce your workforce between January 1st of 2020 and the end of your covered period, then you can file the EZ form. The third one is if you did not reduce the pay of any employee by more than 25% and your business was unable to operate because of compliance with government requirements or guidance. So if the government shut you down and you didn't reduce any of your pay, you can file the EZ form. So in filling out the form for forgiveness, you know, we'll start with the payroll cost, and that's basically gross payroll. All right, if you're paying somebody a salary of $30,000, you include $30,000. If you got folks that were paid more than $100,000, if you've got a executive director that is making more than $100,000, their income is going to be limited. And depending on how you do that, which period, you're going to get limited on that. So if it's an 8-week period, you're limited to claiming $15,835, and then on a 24-week period, it's $46,000 and some change. So you've got to figure that. You got to figure out who was compensated, were they over an annualized rate of $100,000, and adjust for that. If you cut their wages, you're going by more than 25%, you're going to have to adjust for that. We don't have owner's compensation in this particular arena, but there would be an adjustment there. And then you would include your employee health care. If you're providing health insurance for your employees, you'd cover that. Your retirement payments, if you're making payments to a 401k, 403b, IRA, whatever for your folks, you would include that. And then if you are subject to state unemployment taxes, you'd also include that. So those are your total payroll costs. So once you gather that, you'll have that. You add your business mortgage interest payments, any business rent you paid, and your utility payments. And then you get to decide what your FTEs are. Okay, so FTEs are full-time equivalents. And so you have to first determine them. Well, we'll determine them in the current period, and then we compare them to a prior period. But the average full-time equivalence this calculates the average full-time equivalency during the covered period. So using the average hours paid per week and divide by 40, you round to the nearest tenth. And that'll tell you, so if somebody's working 40 hours a week, they're full-time. If they're 30 hours a week, then they're 75%, or if you round and you say 70, that to the next tenth would make that 8. You can also use a simplified method that basically says, I'm going to use a 1 for employees who work 40 or more hours and 0.5 for employees who work fewer hours. Well, you get that total, and you're going to compare that total to your reference period, and you get to choose between 3 reference periods. You can look at February 15th, 2019 to June 30th, 2019 and determine your average employees, or you can use January 1st, 2020 to February 29th of 2020. Or if you run a seasonal operation, then it's any 12-week period between May 1st and September 15th. So let's just say, and I'm going to use, let's just say you have 10 employees now, and you look at last year's or whatever period that you looked at beforehand, and if you had 9 employees last year and 10, well, you're over. You're going to be 100% forgiven. Let's say you had 10 last year and you had 9 this year. Well, now you're going to be 90% forgiven. So if you turned around and there's some reduction exceptions. If you made a good faith written offer to rehire an individual who was an employee on February 15th, 2020, and you made a written offer and they turned you down, then they're not going to count that against you. So you're not going to reduce your number from 10 and back down to 9. If you made that offer and you couldn't hire somebody to replace them, if they rejected that offer, or if you fired somebody for cause, or they voluntarily resigned, or they requested a reduction in their hours, you're not going to get penalized for those things. So there's also some safe harbors. If the borrower in good faith is able to document that it was unable to operate between February 15, 2020 due to compliance with government requirements, then you'll meet a safe harbor and not be reduced. That FTE will not be reduced. You also have if you reduced its number of full-time equivalents, but then restore those by the end of the year, then you'll be fine. So what I was saying earlier is that, let's say you had 13 weeks worth of, you spent your PPP within 13 weeks, you want to go ahead and file the forgiveness. Well, if you file it now and you didn't rehire that person and you're only going to get 90%, it would behoove you at this point to wait till December 31st and then file. Because if you rehired that person, then you'd get 100% forgiveness. Now, one thing on this forgiveness that it's, I know I'm throwing a lot of technical jargon and things at you real quick, and I probably talk real fast, but one thing I do want you to know is that right now that the Senate is considering that if you received a PPP loan of $150,000 or less, you are going to be automatically forgiven. Okay, it's not law yet. It's in consideration. But if you receive less than 150,000, they're just going to wipe the slate and say, you know what, you're forgiven. That number may change. Tomorrow it may be kicked out. I can't tell you one way or the other, but know that right now, and I hate to say this, and I hate to grab on to jargon and the new normal and all these things, but we're in a position where this is, while we have some basic rules and whatnot, it's ever changing. The lines in the sand keep being redrawn. So the documents you're going to need when you file this file for forgiveness is, first, you're going to have to sign an IRS Form 8821, which is a tax information authorization. And basically what you're doing is you're giving the bank the authority to pull your tax records. Okay, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They ask for transcripts on a personal level when you do a mortgage, so this is not out of bounds. You're going to need your payroll documents, and this can include your bank statements, your payroll reports or tax forms for the period that overlaps the cover period. So if you are like most of our clients and use QuickBooks, you ought to be able to run a payroll report for all the different periods that you paid out and include that. You may want to include payments, receipts, canceled checks, account statements that will document if you paid any retirement payments and your health insurance. So the payroll is, I think, fairly easy to document. Again, the banks haven't said what they want, but we believe at minimum this is what they're going to ask for. Your FTE documentation is, you're going to need something showing your employees between, February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2020, or whatever benchmark period you decide to use. And then for the current period, you'll need your non-payroll documents, business mortgage interest payments, your rent or lease payments. You may have to attach a copy of your rental agreement, your utility payments, so your gas and telephone and water bills and all those things. And then the PPP forgiveness loan. All right. Well, let's say you go through all of this and you have an amount that is not forgiven. What's going to happen there is that's going to be converted to a loan. And if you received your disbursement before June 5th, you're going to be on a 2-year loan unless you and your bank agree differently to extend it to 5 years. And then if you receive your disbursement on June 5th or after, that loan, that unforgiven amount, will convert to a 5-year note, and those are at 1% interest. So I know that's a lot of information. That's where we are right now. I am working on several right now just to determine how we're going to compile some of this information, and I'm just at that stage. I did walk through the PPP forgiveness tool at that website. I found it to be very helpful, but you have to do some homework, and it appears that you can come back and go in if you change your mind or want to re-answer your question. It doesn't lock you in the first time. Not 100% sure on it, but I was able to move back and forth in it. I did log out. I did not log back in, but it's a pretty good tool and should be able to help y'all. But I will answer whatever questions you have if I can.
Thank you, Matt. That was extremely helpful. And, you know, again, while sometimes it's dense information, it's important. And this is just the way we got to do business these days. So thank you for taking the time. And here's what I'm going to say. It's 9:57. I am happy to, Matt, if you're welcome to stick around for a few minutes, happy to have Matt stay on and offer some Q&A for just a few minutes. So everybody else, if you're not interested in staying, thank you for taking the time to be here today. We were happy that you could join us. Again, don't forget about the trainings. And of course, the training price special, $25 for one, $40 for two, and $15 for three or more a piece. So thank you for the time to being here. And if you have questions, Matt, if you're okay and you have just a few minutes, we could do some Q&A right now. So y'all be safe, be well, wear your masks, and we'll stick around if you're interested. Let's see here. I see Denise Strub said, so would you recommend waiting a while before filling out the forms?
I think if you want to go ahead and start filling them out, I think you're fine. I think it may be a good idea just to start doing it to make sure you have all the information you need. I would wait to file anything. Okay, and right now you really can't file anything. I know two banks off the top of my head, Bank Plus and Trustmark, have sent out emails to their customers that they've dispersed funds and said, hey, we'll let you know when you can start submitting documents, but right now we don't have it. We're using a third-party vendor to do this, and once we know something, we'll send you a link. I'm working on some templates, but I have not got them to where I want them. They're not sufficient for public use yet, but once I do that, I'll get in touch with Dave and send you what I've got just to compile the information.
Great. And I see Tammy put in the chat that Regions has asked customers to wait as well. Yeah.
So I think you're going to find that across the board. You know, as of last week, it was $131 billion, so they're still trying to get money to people. There's so much in this that is, while the instructions and everything tell you what to do and it's all good, we're starting to see people maybe not argue, but interpret differently what it means. You know, paid versus incurred, or paid and incurred. And they've shot this stuff out so quickly trying to get help to everyone that I don't know that all the I's got dotted and T's got crossed. And I think in some places you know, in the for-profit world where they said, hey, this is not going to be you know, the forgiveness is not going to be taxable. Everybody was under the impression that if they used it for that, it wouldn't be taxable, but now they're saying, the IRS says, but you can't deduct the expenses either. You're not including it in income. And why that makes sense from an IRS standpoint, it in essence, for a taxable entity, that they're going to pay taxes on it. And if you file a 990T and use some of these funds from it, you may not, at this point, you cannot deduct those expenses on your 990T. So it could trickle down. One of my tax partners says, just wait. They're gonna remove that. Just wait. And I'm like, I don't know who you know on the inside, but at this point, it hasn't been changed.
Okay. Anybody else? Going once. Yep.
I've got a quick question. I'm just curious. I do try to keep up with the news until it's too awful. But I didn't realize the Senate was considering an automatic forgiveness for smaller, under 100K. And I'll continue to watch for that. Is that just because they are so overwhelmed there are so many glitches, there's so much to do. Do you know anything more about that as far as purpose behind it? I love the idea. I hope they do it. But I'm preparing all my documents and everything, waiting for the go from regions too.
I think there's a lot of variables that are in that. I think first is if somebody got 150,000 or less, they probably needed 200,000. So they probably, maybe there's more of a need. There's that route. There's also the route that more loans, and I don't have the information right in front of me, but I was looking at it. Most of the loans that were done were under $500,000, or you know, a lion's share of them were actually under 250,000. So I think from just the admin side of administrating this, it cuts down on the number of loans they have to look at. You know, and maybe there's a feeling that if maybe from a fraud standpoint, that the folks that are getting the smaller amounts probably have more of a need than the ones that got a larger amount. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think if you needed it, you needed it. But I think, you know, majority of the loans were smaller ones, and so I think they're trying to alleviate that burden.
Thank you.
I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that we are, as Matt and I were talking about earlier in the week, sort of in tax season, so they may not literally have the capacity to to review them. I mean, there's only so many people in the world or in the U.S. to do this.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not sure who it's going to fall on. If the IRS is going to audit these, or if you know, my understanding was the SBA was going to audit anything over $2 million. Well, does the SBA have the staffing to do that? And how long do you know, at this point under the rules, you're supposed to keep all your documentation 7 or 8 years, which is not unheard of. I mean, we tell our clients all the time, keep copies of your tax returns for 7 years. Even though the IRS without cause can only go back 3 years, if they think you're filing a fraudulent return, they can go back as far as they want to, you know. So, you know, I don't think that the record keeping on our side, I think, is good. And then, you know, at one point they were wanting, you got to certify when you sent this in that you had adequate cause. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, in March and April, you know, it hit some industries harder than others. And you know, we've seen industries that at that time said, hey, based on what we know right now, we believe we're going to need it. So you can only base it off that time that you knew. So.
And I'd be curious to see how many of the organizations that did apply and receive funds are no longer operational or in existence because they just wasn't enough. I mean, that, you know, a lot of that support just couldn't get them through. So,
well, when your 501c3 is dependent on contributions, solely on contributions, on special events, I mean, I've got friends who do all these 5Ks and races like that and all that, and every race, I mean, there were 5 5Ks going on every Saturday. All right, and I don't know that those are big ticket items, I get that, but all of those have been canceled. If you did drawdowns, those are all canceled. You can't gather. You know, so any large fundraising thing that you were doing, galas and those things, special events, I mean, y'all are hurting. And unless you've got some sort of government funding, maybe grants and awards that you can operate under, then, you know, hopefully, and by the grace of God, you'll pull through, and maybe with the help of the PPP loans. But the grassroots folks that are solely contribution, we're seeing them hit the hardest. And while the PPP loans were great, that's only extending it. You know, it's not solving the problem of something that's, you know, I mean, not to be bleak, but there's no foreseeable. I mean, this is a virus. I'm not a doctor. It's going to be around. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's take, if anybody else has any more questions, let's try and wrap this in about 3 minutes. So if there's anybody else out there who has questions, feel free to pop it in the chat or feel free to use your mic. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Okay, yep, exactly, Felicia. 3 times, all right. If we can't have baseball in person, then at least we can do it, we can do it virtually. Thank you all for taking the time. I hope this was useful. Matt, thank you for sticking around. And
I'm sorry I was late.
No, it's fine. Believe me, it's fine. If y'all need anything from us, please feel free to reach out. And Matt has put his contact information in the chat as well. So if you need to capture that before I close out, make sure you grab it now. My pleasure. Thank you, Felicia. Y'all be safe, be well, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.